Hey everyone, it's Raf. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am very excited to be bringing you two book tags. They are the end of year book tag and the cozy Christmas book tag. I've linked all of the original details about the creators down below in the description, so please check that out. And let us get straight into it because I have got piles of books around me. It's going to be a long one. Let's go. So first up is the end of year book tag, and the first question is, are there any books that you started this year that you need to finish? And I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that this entire stack of books is a stack of books I have started this year and DNFd or not finished. And I did not finish them because I didn't like them. I just either was busy or got bored of them or wanted to read something else instead. This first one is Loveboat Taipei by Abigail, Hing. I am currently reading this for book club, so this will be finished. I am very excited for that. The next one is one that I'm a bit ashamed of, and that is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I got up to basically the very end, but this was a book that I took on holidays to read. I did not finish it on holidays, and when I got back I was not in the holidays reading mode anymore, and so I just didn't pick it up, but I really want to finish this. This is a beautiful book that I highly recommend actually, so I've got to stop being a hypocrite and actually read it myself. The next book is one that I haven't finished because I'm slowly working my way through it. That is Emergency Sex and Other Desperate Measures. It is a collection of short essays by a journalist, a doctor, and a lawyer, I think, who worked with the United Nations. And because they're short stories about their experiences being placed around the world in different war zones, it's not one that I think I have to sit down and finish in one sitting. That is my excuse for not having sat down and finished it in one sitting. It's actually very interesting, so I'm excited to finish this one day. Next up is Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. I did read a few of her other books this year and I loved them. I'm very excited to read this. I started it an audiobook, but I think it ran out of time, and so that's why I didn't finish it. A bit of a crappy excuse, but that's okay, I will get to this soon. Next is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I haven't finished this because I started it on a plane and then fell asleep. I'm also not in the mood to read a heavy mystery that's not an Agatha Christie novel, seeing as I've got a whole collection of hers that I am trying to work my way through, so I will probably get to this after that. The next one is another book that I'm very ashamed of myself for not having finished. That is Cress by Marissa, Meyer. This is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which I was rereading this year. I got halfway through and then realised I wanted to read other YA fantasy that I hadn't read before. I have already read this series, so I'm not too upset about not finishing my reread of this book, but I do love it, and so I will get to it sometime. Another Marissa Meyer book, Supernova. This is the last book in the Renegades trilogy. I love the first two books, I just never got around to picking up the third. And the last book is Dune by Herbert. I got this far through. It's just a really dense fantasy, and I haven't read a dense fantasy like this before, so it took me a while to wrap my head around everything that was happening, and I picked it up at a time when I was not bothered to sit down and focus really intently on what was going on in a book, so I just left it. I will be picking this up again though, because I do want to read this with a mate of mine and then discuss it. The next question is, do you have an autumnal book that you read to transition into the end of the year? I think these questions were written by an American, and so they're transitioning into winter. However, over here in Australia, it is boiling hot and we are in the midst of summer. So I have a few book recommendations for transitioning into the warmer weather. The first one is Looking for Alibrandi by Melina Marchetta. This is one of my all-time favourite YA contemporaries. I consider this a classic. This is about a young girl who is trying to find herself and her place in the world in her final year of high school. She is Australian-born but of Italian background, and so she's trying to grapple with different parts of her identity and seeing what she wants to make up who she will become. I love this book. It grapples with themes that are very universal in a way that are very subtle and nuanced. I think a lot of YA contemporary books are trying to do that today and aren't achieving it as well as Melina Marchetta did in this book. So if you want a classic book that explores themes like that, I highly recommend this, especially for younger readers who are growing up and facing that experience themselves. Next up is one of my favourite classics, Anne of Green Gables. This is, I think, perfect for summer. It's light, it's fun, it's emotional. Highly recommend if you haven't read it already. My next summer recommendation is Mackenzie Lee's The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue series. The second book is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. I think this is a super fun summer read. It is a light historical fantasy following the adventure of the Montagu siblings as they go on a grand tour of Europe. It's very whimsical, it's very fun, I highly recommend. My final summer recommendation has to be Jandy Nelson's I'll Give You the Sun. This was one of my first YA contemporary reads, and I still recommend it to everyone to this day. It is so beautiful. It does deal with family tragedy, so it is not a light and fluffy read, which a lot of people might want for summer, but it is beautifully written, set over the course of several summers as the main characters, Jude and Noah, grow up and deal with family tragedy. Highly recommend. The next question is there a new release you're still waiting for? Yes, there is. There are 2 new releases I'm still waiting for. They are both sequels to some of my favourite books. The first one is Anywhere the Wind Blows, which is Rainbow Rowell's 3rd book in the Carry On trilogy, and the second one is the 3rd book in Mackenzie Lee's The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue series. There are actually 2 more books that I am so excited to read. They've already been released in America, I think, but they're being released here in Australia in January. The first one is The Wife Upstairs, which is a Jane Eyre retelling about Bertha Mason. Jane Eyre is one of my favourite classics. And the last book that I am so excited to get my hands on is Time's Monster, which is a historiographical nonfiction. So the next question is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? The first one is, of course, Loveboat Taipei, which I'm reading for book club. The next one is a classic, and that's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. My auntie recommended this to me after she found out I liked Jane Eyre. Apparently this is very dark and very eerie, and I am so excited. And the last book is a book that I've been meaning to read since January this year, and that's The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. And the last question of the end of year book tag is, have you already started making reading plans for 2021? Honestly, no. I have bought a ridiculous amount of books this year, and I think my initial plan is to try and finish reading all of those before I go and pick up anything new. Now it's time for the Cozy Christmas book tag. The first question is Twinkling Lights. What is the most beautiful book I own? For this I have 2 historical books. One of them is a non-fiction and one of them is a fantasy. The first is Venus and Aphrodite by Bettany Hughes, and the second is Circe by Madeline Miller. They both have very pretty gold and copper foiling on them. If it's shiny, I will buy it. The next question is Knee-High Socks. What is the longest book I've read? For that, I think it has to be Winter by Marissa Meyer. This is a brick. It is 800 and something pages long, and I read it on my phone, so I didn't actually realize how long of a book it was, and so when it was taking me very long to finish it, I got very worried, and then I realized it's because it's a mammoth. The next question is based off ugly Christmas sweaters. What is the ugliest book I own? My answer for this question hurts my soul because this is one of my all-time favourite book series, but it has to be the covers of the Heroes of Olympus Rick Riordan books. I don't know if these are the covers distributed everywhere in the world, but in Australia we have these. And I'm not a fan at all. I want one of my favourite childhood book series to have a beautiful cover that I can pass on to my children when I force them to read my favourite books, but no, instead they're going to get this. The next question is Crackling Fire. What is a book that makes you feel warm and cozy? I'm going to talk about a book that I haven't actually read yet, but it is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I'm saying this for my answer because I think this type of book is one that would make me feel warm and cozy, not because of the story or the plot, but because of the setting. It is set in a world inspired by medieval Russia, and I think the idea of a witch working with magic in a little cabin in the wintry Russian woods is a very cozy image, and so this is my answer. And the last question is Blizzards. What is a book set in winter or a book that gives you the chills or has dark themes? For this I have 2 answers and they are both fantasies. The first is The Hazelwood by Marissa Albert and the second is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Neither of these are set in winter specifically, I don't think. However, they both are fantasies that do have very dark themes, and the description in both of them is very lyrical, very beautiful, and also very dark and eerie. This has stunning description of a circus, and there's a specific display at the circus which is a wintry ice forest, and it stuck with me because it's so beautiful and it gave me chills. So definitely this as one of the answers. This is my answer for a similar reason. It is originally set in New York, but we are transported into a faraway forest or woods that is full of evil fairy tales. It is very dark, very chilly and eerie, despite not being specifically set in a winter setting. And that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed those 2 tags. I actually had a lot of fun going through my bookshelf and picking books based off questions. So if you have any more tags you'd like me to do, please let me know. I will be very keen on doing them, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!